Hello there, and welcome to Science. This year we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to start with term one with a focus on a new learning system, a system that I've called the WRX. The WRX is a hybrid system which promises, hopefully, some class-leading performance. I hope as a result of working through the WRX, you find learning a little bit more interesting, a little bit challenging, and perhaps that you may find that you know just a little bit more about science than you thought you did. So what is the WRX? Well, very simply, WRX is watch, read, and explain. And yes, I know I've cheated a little bit with the explain, but hey, it's not an English course. So what are we going to do when we work through the WRX? Well, traditionally, teaching is very much sitting in the room for 53 minutes and the teacher talks to you. You do some activities from the book, hopefully you do some practical work, but a lot of the time the teacher does all the explaining. Now, that's not ideal because some of you will get that very quickly. Some of you will struggle to stay awake, and others will just find other things to do. And I don't want that. I want to make sure that you get all the important key concepts and that you have a chance to practice those key concepts to see whether or not you have actually understood them. In the traditional method, the teacher tells you the information and then you do the questions at home. What that means is if you have problems with questions at home, it's more difficult to ask somebody how to help solve those. You can check the answers in the back of a book, but it doesn't always tell you how to do something, just whether or not you've got something correct or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the homework section. So home is where you first see a new concept. You watch something on a video or an interactive, and the watch is going to be exactly what you're doing now. It'll either be me or it'll be a video that I've selected for you to have a look at, which has relevance to the topic that we're going to be discussing in class. Then I'm going to ask you to read, and I will give you a schedule at the beginning of the term to show you exactly what I want you to do for each lesson. There will be a little bit of time that you will need to use for preparation, but you won't have to do a lot of questions. All you'll have to do is watch something and read something. If you want to make some notes to help you, then you can certainly do that, but both of these two steps are home steps. Watch a video and read a little bit of information from your textbook. When you come to school, I'm going to assume that you've done both of those things. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work through experiments. We're going to design some experiments and we're going to carry out some experiments. We're going to build some models. We're going to look at questions. We're going to work with whiteboards to sit and explain to each other exactly how we go about solving problems, how we go about putting the concepts that we've been watching and reading into practice. So when do you get to drive the WRX? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the first two of these gears are covered at home. So what you're going to do for homework is you're going to watch videos. So this video is something that you can show to your parents. You can tell them that whenever you're watching videos, you're actually doing your science homework. Now the videos are going to be me, and I suggest that one of the first things you do is to actually share this video with your parents so that they understand exactly what you're going to be doing this term. Now sometimes, if I have time, I'll try and prepare videos ahead of time so you know exactly what you need to watch, but sometimes it will be someone else. There are a heap of science videos on the internet, and some of them are not great. You might consider this as one of them. But some of them are really good, and some of the graphics are really nice, and some of the concepts are very nice as well. And certainly if there are interactives that models a process that makes it neater and easier for you to understand than if I just talk to you about something, then I will select those videos for you to watch. You shouldn't expect to spend more than about 10 minutes on any one video. So that could be the maximum amount of time that you would spend watching a video for science. Now you can make notes if you want, but all I want to do initially is to expose you to the material, just for you to watch something new, hopefully something that might link with something that you've done before, but something that gives us a baseline for a discussion back in class. Then I'm going to get you to read from your textbook or your ebook a small section. Now this small section is probably only going to be somewhere between 1 and maybe 3 pages. Okay, I don't want you to be reading great slabs out of the textbook. Sometimes though there's a lot of information, sometimes there's worked examples, and you may want to follow through on those, and sometimes they take up a little bit more room. So that's why sometimes it might be as much as 3 pages I'll get you to read, and other times 1. Now again, I'm anticipating this is probably going to take you somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. So you can expect that you're going to be, generally speaking, spending around about 20 minutes on your science in preparation for your lessons. This should give you exposure to the material, and it should put you in a better position when it comes to discussing the issues that we're going to look at during class time. The other gears are going to be completed at school. When you get to school, the first thing you're going to do is answer a 3-question quiz. The 3-question quiz is a quiz that's designed to simply test whether or not you've actually completed the homework assignment. That is, if you've actually watched the video and read the questions. These will not be concept-based. They may be simply some reference to a particular diagram in the textbook or an explanation of a concept that was used in the video. So for example, a question might be, what does WRX stand for? If you could answer that question, you probably can answer it because you've watched this video. So that might be one of the 3 questions that you would get for this particular assignment. That's how we'll start each lesson. I'll get you to just review what you've done. We'll have a look at who's done it and who hasn't, and that will give you a bit of an idea when you're working in your groups at different times, who is on the ball, who's up to date with the information, and maybe who needs a little bit of filling in. So to get the most out of your science lessons, it's really important that you do those first 2 gears at home so you're in a position to get through this quiz. Now I would anticipate this quiz will probably take us all of about 2 minutes. That leaves us 50 odd minutes, 51 maybe, for everything else that we want to do in class. And I'd like to maximize our class time by discussing problems, getting you to actually solve problems both on your own and in small groups. When you collaborate with other students, you share your information and you share your understandings. One of the strengths of this system is that it means that information is being explained not just by me, but also by your classmates. And often they can explain something in a way that's easier for you to understand than I can. I've been teaching a lot of these concepts for such a long time now that they're automatic to me. And sometimes I forget which things are more difficult and which things have multiple meanings. So we can talk about solution. And a solution may be how you solve a problem, or it may be a combination of a solute and a solvent. So words sometimes have multiple meanings, particularly in science, and therefore it's important to understand the language of science and also to be able to put that into a language that is accessible to you. What we want to try and do then with these problems is to explain some of the link between what you've watched and what you've read, and how you might answer questions, how certain problems are structured that you might need to solve, how questions might come up in a test that you might need to be answering, and most importantly, what sort of questions can be answered using practical work, using the experimental method or the scientific method. So that means we free up a lot more of our class time for experiments, for problem solving, and for discussion that would otherwise be taken up with just your teacher talking at you. So why a WRX? Well, mainly because it's a good flipping idea. You may or may not have heard of a concept called the flipped classroom. This is an example of the flipped classroom. And the reason it's an example of a flipped classroom is because primarily what you do in most normal classrooms is the teacher gives you the information and then sets you questions as homework. In this case, the information is the homework. and the questions are what we go through together in class. And that makes it much easier for me to help you out. It's easier for you as well, because if you're sick, if you're away representing the school, if for any other reason you miss a class, you know that the concepts are available. You just have to go and find the video and watch them. You have to find a section of the textbook and read them. You'll know ahead of time. So if it's not an illness, if it's a representative duty, for example, with a sporting team, you can read that ahead of time, or you can watch the video, or you can watch it traveling, or you can have a look at it afterwards. There's a lot of ways in which you can access that material. Most importantly, it's also a bank of material for you to use in revision for an exam. So you can go through the list of videos that you've watched and maybe go through one or two of them again where you felt that the concepts were a little bit tricky for you. So all of that material is there, and you can watch it again and again until you feel that you're comfortable with those concepts. And most importantly, by moving the questions and the problem solving to the class instead of at home, you've got an opportunity to work on them with your friends, with your teacher, and receive whatever help you need. You can talk about how you solve problems, how you address certain questions, what sort of information you need to include, and for experiments, how you're going to design your experiments in order to test your hypotheses. The other reason we're using the WRX is because it has been shown consistently to improve learning. It's going to help you understand your work better and to ensure that you are doing the absolute maximum that you can do in order to achieve at the highest level of which you're capable. Thanks for listening.